How are you doing? It's great to see you.
And
It
you.
feels like a long time. I can't even think since we last saw each other.
Yeah, I was trying to think because we've had a year now without traveling.
Yeah.
So and we
And
saw
it would have been
you
close to a year
very briefly, yeah.
before. Was it in
Well, we
May
spent a
that you were
night.
in the UK? Yeah. You were our place, our new place, right? You came and stayed
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
So
But that was a
that's not
couple of years
too
ago now,
long
probably.
ago,
So
but was it?
I think it must be close to that.
It
Because you
all
usually do
turns
your
into a
UK
blur.
tour in the beginning of summer, end of spring. Is that right?
Yeah, I think
Or our
so.
summer, spring, I should say.
Yeah, we have that has been the usual case. We have had the odd exception, but
Yeah. Or maybe it was
somehow
an
over the
exception.
last years we've managed to avoid winter.
Yeah, well, that's the way to
And
do it. Big time.
so for I think about 6 years we didn't have any winter,
Oh, that's my dream.
and then we broke that little thing by
Was it a
going
shock to
to
your system this year then?
it. Yeah, it was. We forgot that South Africa actually has a bit of a winter.
Yeah, yeah.
We're under this little illusion that, I mean, our weather is generally a lot better than
Sure.
what you have there. But yeah, we've got a bit cold this winter. But I think it
Oh,
was
brilliant.
when were we? We were in Montana. Actually, we arrived in the UK first. Trying to think when it was, and you were in the middle of winter, and it was a pretty bad one. And
Mm.
we arrived from something ridiculous temperatures. You guys do Celsius, eh?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we do.
We were in like 36 Celsius here, or something like that. And then we
Wow.
arrived to the minuses, and that was quite a shock to our system.
Oh,
And then we
God.
were in Montana, where it was just ridiculous.
Yeah, a whole nother
The
level, I
ice was
imagine.
just melting. Yeah.
Oh, God. Thing is, though, in somewhere like Montana, they're kind of braced for it. You know what I mean? Like, they can
They
cope
are.
with the cold. I feel like if we get particularly cold weather in the UK, no one really knows what to do. You know, like, it's like if it
Yes.
snows, just everyone's like, oh, we'll shut the airports, we'll just shut everything down, like, let's just give up. And, like,
We
that,
remember that
so
because
much of the world doesn't do that.
I know, we lived in the UK for 9 years, and I mean, we loved it because, the kids were out and
Sure.
home from school, but it's like, oh, there are leaves on the railway line. Let's stop everything.
It's a weird,
So
weird place,
we
the
took, we
UK.
took great advantage of that, those home days in the snow.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, there's more of them up north, but then we kind of roll with it up in Scotland a little bit better as well. We're kind of like, oh, it's
Yeah.
snowing. Well, everyone knows how to drive in the snow. Everyone knows what to do and kind of gets on with it. But yeah, it's like I was in California when I was at Bethel. So
Yeah.
California, I think the second year it snowed for like one day, and it was the first time it had snowed in like,
Whatever.
years, like in that area.
Yes.
And I think there was like a quarter of an inch of snow. I mean, it was just like, half a centimeter or something. And I personally, after like driving up my driveway and driving about, half a mile up the road, I witnessed 2 accidents. And I was just like,
Oh,
you know what? I'm turning around. I just went straight home and I was like, I'm working from home today. I am not going
yeah.
anywhere with people like that. But they don't know how to drive in the
No.
rain in
And
California,
the
never
Los
mind the snow.
Angeles traffic, I mean, at the best of times, even without
Yeah.
bad weather, wow. I recorded my CD in LA, and I had to kind of judge how to get across town.
Right.
And I remember just
Oh,
being
man.
late for the recording on a couple of occasions,
Yeah.
because no matter how much planning went into it, there was something
It
going on.
always
So,
takes longer. Yeah.
yeah,
It's a weird city. I'm not a big fan of LA. It's just too much driving. Anywhere you live in
yeah,
LA, you just are going to be
yeah,
driving forever. So,
yeah.
yeah. Oh, good. How are you guys doing? You holding up in the pandemic?
It's been a very different time for us, obviously, not
Mm,
traveling. But we've been really busy with stuff that we can't usually get to while we're on the
sure.
move. And we've developed some exciting course material, and we started a podcast
Yeah, I
and all
saw that.
sorts of
Yeah.
things, so it's been a productive time.
Yeah.
And, there are many beautiful things about, I think, what this time can teach us. that we definitely miss the connection. And, you know, we have so many friends all over the world, and we miss that. So
yeah, absolutely. The Zooms just don't cut it, do they? They're not the same.
No, want to touch.
I know. Hugs, hanging around, sharing drinks, laughing. You know, it's all subdued suddenly when it's on a screen, isn't it? It's just
Andre
very
always
different.
laughs at me because he says, you know, this lockdown is really teaching me some boundaries because because I just go in there. I just love, I hug and whatever. And sometimes I forget. And so I launch in, and then you've got this awkward moment with people where they're like
half hug, almost in. Yeah. You suddenly realize why everyone's wearing a mask, and you're like, oh yeah, we're not doing a hug thing or shaking hands or It's, I think as well, if you're working from home, like, you know, like you guys are, you know, your material, things like that, you're working from the house. You're not going out anyway a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And I find like that is the weird part for me, is like we go out to socialize, but other than that, we work from home, both of us.
Yes.
We spend a lot of time at home. You know, a lot of our hobbies are staying in, maybe have a few friends over, but generally we stay in, we play board games, we watch some Netflix, we chill. And suddenly there's a pandemic, but you can go 2 or 3 days working away, and you go out to the shops and you're suddenly like, oh yeah, gosh, there's a global pandemic and everyone's like, you know, stressed out, and oh gosh, I should probably be really stressed out right now. And it's an extraordinarily privileged position to be in. You know, I mean, a lot of the world doesn't get that privilege of not realizing there's a pandemic. But it does throw me quite consistently. I kind of like just go, oh yeah, gosh, there's a huge thing. It's a weird dynamic.
It's been a strange year.
Yeah. But I guess, I mean, you are like, to me, you and Andre are both like pictures of peace. And I'm sure that you would laugh at that because everyone's always like, well, little do you know. But you've always exuded a peace around you. When I'm around you, I feel more at peace. I feel more loved, full of joy, lots of things. But peace is something that you both seem to carry with you, and it gets on me when I'm around. And I know that you have been cultivating a lot of that in your life as well. And so I'd love to talk about some of those things. I know you're doing the contemplative prayer. We could talk about a whole bunch of different things, but I'd love to go into some of that stuff with you, because I know that's something you're quite passionate about. Kind of a bit more meditation, being present.
Yes, it's interesting. I mean, especially in the time we're in at the moment, where everything is just about busyness, and even with what's going on in the world, you know, whether you're busy outdoors or in a crowd, you've got this bombardment of media and voices telling you what to think, what to believe. But maybe I should start the story back where I had these two kind of little secret desires, and it was, I actually can't remember how many years ago, but I had these two desires, and the reason for them was because of the busyness of our travels. I mean, you know, we were on the road constantly for 6-7 years, with no home base, just traveling from one place to another. And I know many people have had, you know, a bit of experience in the traveling and traveling ministry, but it's quite something different when you have nowhere literally to return to, and you are every few days in a new place, new faces, 100 different people every week.
Oh my gosh.
And something very different happens, you know, for the first couple of months, because we encountered a lot of people who go, well, you know, travel is your life sounds amazing. It's so exciting and it's wonderful and it's adventurous. And yes, you know, obviously it is an adventure and we make the most of it, but it's probably after the first, second or third month that the novelty of the traveling wore off, and it is a means to get there, but it certainly was quite challenging for a time. You know, when you've got these intercontinental flights, your body doesn't know whether it's day or night. You are with people 24/7. And I mean, my adrenaline was literally revving so high that it forgot how to switch off.
What's your personality type? Are you quite extroverted or introverted? Because I'm an introvert and I listen to that. And I mean, I've traveled a lot, but I've always kind of had that like, okay, but I'm spacing these out. I'm always coming home and I spend, a day just weeping in the corner, like with letting that adrenaline like drain, recharging, sitting with a book or, I come in the door and, Tilly comes to meet me and I'm like, no more people. I love you, but give me 2 minutes, just 3 minutes in a room on my own somewhere. I've done airports, people's houses, meetings. It's just so much. I'm kind of joking. Of course, I'm very excited to see Tilly, but like, what's your personality type for that kind of stuff anyway? Do you thrive around
it's
people?
Amazing. I love people. I absolutely thrive on people. And so I am a bit of an extrovert, but I learned so much about myself that though I'm an extrovert, I realized that I do not actually switch off if I'm in company. Unless I'm on my own, I don't switch off.
Right.
Which was quite a dangerous place to be at that kind of adrenaline level. Yeah. But so I realized that about myself. Though I love the people and I love the vibe, I really need time alone to just completely switch off and the space to just breathe.
Absolutely.
And so, with that, as I said, I had these two secret desires and I didn't even communicate with Andre with them. It was just kind of just there. Secret desires, prayers, whatever you want to call them. And the 1 year we were actually on our way on another, I think, trip. We were going to Canada and then to the States and I think to the UK as well, into Europe. And this was our first kind of point of call. In Canada. We were in Toronto and it was so amazing because we met with a pastor there who was hosting the meetings. He wasn't actually, we hadn't ever met. And so these two things that I desired were, one, to really embark on a contemplative practice because in the busyness, sometimes the easiest things to do are the things that we neglect because we don't place the same value upon them.
Yeah.
And so the easiest things to do are often the most difficult to do. And, people often say, yes, I want to embark on meditation. Let's get another book. I didn't want to read another book on meditation. I didn't want to fill myself with more knowledge. I really desire an embodied experience in life. I don't want to just grasp things mentally. I want to get into the experience of it. And so the one thing was a contemplative practice. And I thought specifically in centering prayer, I want to just do that and not just in theory. I want to actually spend some time with someone who does it and let's go through it. And the other thing was actually on the Enneagram, which is, you might know a little bit about. And again, I felt I want to go into the narrative tradition, to storytelling, the way we tell our stories. And we arrive in Toronto. And as I say, these are unspoken desires. And the first person we meet, they're having a conversation and the topic Enneagram pops up. And so obviously my ears prick.
Yeah.
And it ends up, they have an Enneagram practitioner in their congregation who has a school and, who just wants to chat. And both Andre and I went through, got ourselves typed with her. And that coming weekend, and we never have weekends off because we're obviously busy with services and what have you. This gap opens in our schedule for the whole weekend. Like our first weekend there, it's ridiculous. And she says there's a course coming up and the pastor of the church wants to pay for you guys to go on it. And it's a whole weekend with Renee Rosario, who is one of the top narrative tradition Enneagram teachers from Colorado, and she had taken the whole session. And how beautiful. Our whole theme for that trip was on story versus plan. We often think that God sits with a plan for us and, he's got this plan in the beginning and we need to just follow it. And if we deviate in any way, he kind of slaps us back and this is the plan. Whereas we know our lives are more stories, and they unfold, they have twists and turns, they have surprises. A chapter of tragedy might have just happened, but the story's not over. And how beautiful to embark on this Enneagram journey where it's all about storytelling. And here's these panels telling their stories. And so that was the one beautiful thing, how that desire just kind of surprised me. And the next thing was, as I said, in meditation, contemplative, and we drive down to our next host, and we meet them, and then we've got another hour in the car, and I'm busy chatting to our lovely friends now, Sue, and asking about her life. What is she up to? And she says, I teach the practice of centering prayer, and I've led our whole congregation through it, and I've been teaching it for the last 9 years. And I'm like, oh, and
so great.
And she obviously just sensed the kind of interest in me, and she was like, would you let me teach you? And I was like, yes. And for that next week, it was just so beautiful to have this quiet. And as I say, we never have weeks open like that. And to have somebody who really just oozed peace to, take us through. And so that's kind of how that journey started, in finding a daily practice. We'd been meditating in various forms through the years. I know when you say the word meditation to many Christians, the shackles come up.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, just get over it,
Yeah.
because
trust me, after some meditation, you'll feel much better.
Yes, be still and know that I'm God. Whatever you need to hear, to understand that it's such a positive practice. And
so there's all sorts of different terms that kind of get thrown around, and different practices in different ways. I mean, even meditation is such a varied kind of world, so you can go into all kinds of different meditative practices. But how would you describe, because you're talking specifically about centering prayer being this thing that you've really found a lot of help and peace from. How does that differ from other contemplative or meditative practices? Like, what's unique about centering prayer? Sorry.
That's such a good question, Phil, because there's so many different ways. I mean, you think of a contemplative practice, even the word contemplation gives an idea of thinking.
Yeah.
And there are practices in which, more discursive meditation, where you will be focusing on a word or a sentence and really just going down, let that, there's practices like Lectio Divina, where you take the scriptures and you really meditate on them. There are practices in which you maybe focus on a thing, maybe breath, and you focus on your breath and the in-breaths and the out-breaths. And so it is a focus, and there's a specific goal to it. What I love about this practice of, and you can call it anything you like, centering, or I like to even say the prayer of yes, or the time in which you are actually basically just consenting to be, and to tap into those rivers which are deeper than thoughts, deeper than words, deeper than even consciousness itself, and to sit with the abiding presence of God. We live in a world, or even in Christianity, where we think that prayer is words, and we come with our lists, and we come and we tell and we talk and we, and actually in the Aramaic language, prayer was more about listening. That's what it meant. It was being open and listening. And so, and even in this practice, it's not even that you are sitting and you're waiting for the Lord to speak some specific thing to you. You're actually just sitting and being. And, it's difficult to actually explain to someone what happens in that time or how that makes any sense to just sit.
Yeah. No,
just
absolutely.
be. But we are so we are so conditioned to be in this place where our thoughts are dictating the whole time. I mean, you just think of it. Your thoughts are going 24/7.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and you go down rabbit holes, and that is what is dictating to us.
Yeah.
These senses, you know, what we see, what we hear, what we do, everything is about this conversation that's going on, and sometimes it's incessant.
Yeah.
And people
No,
often,
it really
you know,
is.
will ask, you know, how can I still this? How can I reach a place where, and when I say reach a place, I'm not talking about that this is some place that you need to reach. I think even in our language, we're so conditioned to working or striving towards something. But really, at the bottom of it, this is more about letting go. And as simple as that, it's letting go of the narrative, of the dialogue, and sinking into a place of connection where, you know, I think a lot of people think, well, what the nervousness to actually practice something like this is what if I'm quiet, then I'm actually with myself and with my thoughts.
Yeah.
And that's a scary thought, because what will I find there?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's why we've also been doing retreats. And this year we've offered a contemplative practice on our online course, which is a new thing for us, because I really enjoy the retreats because you can really absorb into actually doing it. Yeah. Whereas, you know, I was a bit nervous. How is this going to work on an online platform? But it's been so precious. And once a week, we meet with the students on Zoom. And so once they've gone through the lessons, then we practice together. We just we sit together, and you know, I follow them through, lead them through a meditation, and and then we spend some time in silence.
Yeah. I often say, I mean, you kind of alluded to it there, but I know for me, you put me in a room with nothing. Yeah. Nothing at all. Empty room. We've just done some decorating and redoing. So some rooms have been completely gutted out and there's just nothing in it. Yes. And you stand there and I don't think I could survive in that room for more than a few minutes most of the time. Unless I was being really intentional to be, okay, like this, I'm going to turn this into some incredible meditative practice. Even then, I'm 10 seconds in, I'm a minute in, and I'm going, oh, where did I put my phone? Or, oh, should I put that wash on? Or whatever it is, right? It's just, or you just go, oh, remember that time when you were a kid and you said this and you were embarrassed and you're like, oh, great, thanks. Good to bring that up. Like, we just, as soon as we stop, our brain just doesn't stop. And a lot of time we want something to busy our brain to take it off of the turning inwards and suddenly dealing with certain things that come up or whatever it is. I know I like to be busy because I don't like allowing myself to just sit. And I found a lot from meditative practice. It's not about quieting the brain, or the thoughts. To me, it's about just observing them and letting them be. Absolutely. And giving them space, because actually most of the time I'm trying to drown that out. And actually when I give it space, I just need to let it be once. It just comes up and you go, oh yeah, I never really thought about that. Let me process it. Okay, cool. And it's gone. It moves on. But I don't want to do that most of the time.
No. And we often try and combat thoughts with thoughts. You know, we think, I need to get rid of this thought. Or like you say, you sit in that room or you sit in meditation, suddenly you're thinking about everything, what I ate for lunch, or even this meditation's not going so well. Or this is going well. Yeah. Hey, I'm
big on
this.
that. I'm really big on that, right? They're like, you know, you follow like a Headspace app or something like that. And they're, all right, now just breathe in and breathe out. I want you to count your breaths and restart every 10 breaths or something, so you don't make it about how high you get. I'm totally making it about how high I get because I never get to 10. Like, I'm getting to 2, maybe 3. I'm like, oh, that was a good round. I got to 4. Wait, I'm thinking about I got to 4. And, you know, like, it's like, just count your breaths, Phil. No, I'm off. I'm here. I'm there. It is such a, like, I just live in my brain, and I'm sure that a lot of people do live in that space.
Yeah, and you're not the only one. I think we all understand that. We all understand that place. And you know, I've been amazed at how difficult it is for people to get into that place of silence, because, you know, you had 20 minutes of silence and they go, wow, no, I'm not going to make that 20 minutes. And it just shows you at what space we've been at, that we place such confidence in this dialogue and in what's going on in that cognitive way. And I mean, maybe an example of, we were in Florida the one year, and we went with friends. They took us out on this little boat on a river, but it was more like it's fed by hot springs. It's quite amazing.
Oh, wow.
The most clear blue water. There were alligators and, you know.
I was going to say, I'm not a big fan of going in water in Florida. That's not on my list of things to do.
This was just too tempting. I mean, that water was just perfect. But before we went
It'll
in,
cook
actually
you for the alligators, right?
Yeah, on the side,
human.
we noticed these snakes, which resembled water moccasins, which are highly, you know, poisonous. But they were literally, they're like a thigh. And it was a whole family of them. So I go to the owners of this little place and say, you know, I just want to let you know there's a family of what looks like water moccasins at the. Oh no, she said, those aren't water moccasins. They look like water moccasins, but they're harmless. And yeah, we know they're there. And I was like, oh, okay. And off we go, still into the river. And at one point, we actually jumped over the edge, and I remember just sinking down into this clear water and landing on the riverbed. And Phil's
I'm getting anxious listening to this story, Mary.
And he's like, "This is the wrong story to tell for a contemplative practice." And actually, sometimes people actually don't relate to that because they feel claustrophobic underwater. But okay, for the sake of the illustration, I sank down and just sat at the bottom of the water. And I remember thinking, sitting there and kind of like looking around, what a peaceful place it was. That there was just this stillness where I just felt so present to what is. And, you know, and then we surfaced again and went on. And I remember in between like the pondweed, there were a few alligators, but it was at some points where the pondweed was just so thick that you couldn't even see the water. And I think of a place, I think it's in Japan. I think it's called Aberdeen Harbor. You might know of it, where if you kind of if you zoom out in a satellite or what have you, you can't see that there's actually a river because they've got these boats, these kind of shops on the river.
Yeah.
What do you call them? Little, in any case, they're boats. And they're jam-packed together. It doesn't look like there's river there. And if you had to take those boats and kind of just spread them apart a bit, what would emerge is the river underneath. And that would emerge and you would see it. And I think in the same way, you know, you spoke about thoughts, and we often try and fight those thoughts or but you don't fight thoughts. Thoughts are part of you. It's a natural part of your being and your existence. You wouldn't be if you didn't think. And so it's not fighting against those thoughts. It's merely just, like you say, observing them and letting them be. And specifically in the practice of centering prayer, you would use what they call a sacred word. There's nothing sacred about the word. It's basically just, this is a tool for you, almost like I like to picture it as a bookmark, because you've been in this place of still and you're suddenly aware of a thought. So it's just like putting the book, you know, where the bookmark is, opening again. That's my spot. That's where I just carry on. And so it's just gently, almost like you would lay a feather. You just let those thoughts pass by your stream of consciousness. Because this deep place of inner awareness that we sink into, you can imagine then our thoughts and our being, this consciousness that goes like the surface of the river that just ripples along the top. And, there might be speedboats that go along the way, or there might be whatever it is. Say you're a diver and you're down in the bottom of the ocean, and there might be a point where you see a flashy boat and you kind of come up, have a look, and you might jump on the boat and go off with it for a while. But the idea, and so in this particular practice, is you have this word to just bring to mind, which just helps to let those thoughts go and for you to return. And that's the thing, is that word, you could use a breath or a glance, is just your return to that abiding presence and your return to your original intention, which is just to be. So it's not a practice that's goal orientated. You're not trying to get to a higher level of being, a higher level of, there's no goal to it. It's specifically without goal. Your only goal is to be present. And so that's very different from, and I think only once you start experiencing that form of silence do you see the value of it. Because I think it's still, if you're not practicing it, it's still merged with how does this, is this just, a way of dealing with thoughts or a way of having a goal? You don't really observe its value until you jump in and just do it. And obviously what's amazing from it is, the fruit of a contemplative practice will be seen in daily life. It's, your goal is not during that time or to see fruit during that time, or this is a good meditation, I've got goosebumps, whatever. It's purely to be, but the fruit of it you will see in your daily life, because once that river is able to surface, that unconscious place, which we so often ignore, can have a voice, and the conscious and the unconscious can, have their merge and have, the unconscious can have its say. And so we've seen amazing fruit and peace in the midst of circumstances. We live in a world of much going on, and a lot of trials, or just stuff happening, and to access peace in that time, that you can carry this peace with you. It's not just a goal to be in a 20-minute silence. It's to really live peace, and in a peaceful way, and in peace with your environment and with nature, to stop fighting things, to stop fighting the stream of reality as it flows, but to actually just be with it.
Yeah. I can see that in it. I mean, I am not the world's most dedicated practitioner of meditation, contemplation, any form of centering. I'd like to be, but obviously I don't really want to be, otherwise I would do it. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, at the end of the day, I don't really want to do it. Apparently, I'd much rather watch Netflix or get busy with work or whatever else I end up doing. But in the seasons I have, established kind of some sort of meditative kind of practice, nothing profound. 10 minutes, maybe working up to 20 minutes a day, just when I start my day, or maybe in the middle of the day to have a bit of a break or whatever. That's what I've found, is that, I'm the person that wants to make it a goal. I'm the person that wants to go, all right, so I'm starting at level 1 meditation. How do I become a level 2 meditator? Like, I want to level up. I want to be a better meditator. I want to get to the goal of meditation nirvana. When do I become Ramana Maharshi or whoever it is, like, when do I become the next Ram Dass, whatever it is. I'm just so driven, right? And of course, the answer to that is never with that mentality. That you will never get there with that mentality. That has to die. It's in letting go of that desire that you find it. But what's interesting is there is a thing of, you don't even have to do it right. You don't even have to win or not think or whatever. Because you're building this practice of, it's almost in a failure. And I think when last time I talked to you, I think we talked about this and I was asking about it and you said something really beautiful. I wonder if you probably say it much better than me, because my memory is terrible. Not as bad as my meditation practice, but it's up there. You mentioned something about how it was in the failure that you almost succeeded because it was an opportunity to come back. It was actually when you left that quiet place that actually you learned to come back. And it was the learning to come back so important, because that's what you're doing in your day-to-day life. You're
and I think you say it quite well, but obviously if you at that point where you suddenly are aware of a thought, you realize now you're thinking and you have the opportunity to return. And so I remember somebody used the illustration, I think it was of Thomas Keating, used the illustration of doing one of these retreats, and a precious nun came to her. I wish I could do an Irish accent because I'm sure she was Irish. But that I probably sounded, I'll make them all sound Indian. Isn't it who is it? You told us about somebody who always sounds Indian with their accent.
That's my dad. Every accent. He's like, I'll do a French accent and he sounds Indian. And then he'll do like a Jamaican accent. He still sounds Indian. I don't know how. He works with people from multiple cultures as well, which makes it more ridiculous. Like should have an ear for it, but he has no ear for accents apparently. He just has a default one.
But this Irish or Indian nun came to Thomas Keating and said, "Well, Father, I'm just failing at this practice because I've had like 150 thoughts during that 20 minutes." And he just, without missing a beat, smiled at her and said, "How wonderful, 150 opportunities to return to God." And that's just, for me, so beautiful because you cannot fail at this. And if you may come to it even with a goal. I'm not sleeping well and I want to, meditate. You may want it for a specific reason, and that's fine. We all start with skew motives, but if we just get to it, wonderful, because we have an opportunity to find our way and find a way of connecting, which is really at the end of the day that is what you want to do. You want to become more aware. I remember this beautiful poem, and I'm not going to give it any justice, but it speaks about, "Oh, crystal waters, would you form the I that I have longed for and have known?" And it's kind of along that whole sense of the eye through which we see God is the same eye through which God sees us. It's the same eye, and it's the same presence, that you are just consenting to be with the one who knows you in and out, and if you understand that your being in that place of silence is being with the one where there is no judgment. There isn't, this is the wrong or right way to do things. This is just, oh my gosh, I get you in your entirety. I get you in the entireness of your being. And that just brings me to the thought that, many of the mystics have spoken about the language of God is silence. All else is translation and sometimes misinterpretation. And if you see, even right in the beginning, over the chaos, over the welter and waste, God hovers, the Spirit hovers in this silent contemplation. How beautiful to have that picture that no matter how much chaos, no matter how many thoughts, no matter how what's going on in our lives or in our days, God is so ready to just hover over that chaos in silence. And, even that very thing of, an expectation, because a lot of people will go, well, in that time of my 20 minutes of silence, well, now the Lord is speaking to me and I saw this and I had this vision or whatever. And that's wonderful. I love seeing things, having visions, hearing, the voice of God in my being. But during this time, it's just for you to be still, for heaven's sake. You've got 24 hours of a day, 20 minutes, 10 minutes. Take that time and just stop that narrative. And so, somebody who teaches it, well, I think it was also Thomas Keating who said, so what if, an angel of the Lord appears to me during this time? He said, well, you say, dearest one or whatever, I'll be back after 20 minutes.
That's funny.
And I love that because, I can go walking with Andre in a forest and, we can just kick about and kick the leaves together. We don't have to say anything. I'm not waiting for him to speak. He's not waiting for me. There's no expectation. I can just hang with him, kick about, and know that I have his full approval and attention. And so it is that place where there doesn't need to be words. There doesn't need to be a dialogue, but that you can just be and sink into it.
Yeah. That's beautiful. It's really beautiful. I love it. I think you talk about that just at the end, like this ability to just being here now is enough. Just being and just being with ourself, with whatever animates oneself, whatever that is. People have different language for that. God's consciousness, existence, whatever it is. Just being there, there's something so profoundly freeing about coming to peace with that. Like I'm saying, like you sit in an empty room and you're just like, I feel a bit anxious. What am I going to do? I don't want to particularly have to explore my thoughts too much, right? Yeah. And I mean, what do you think it is that we're running from in those moments? What is it that stops us wanting to switch off? Like, do you have thoughts on that? Is that something you've come across as you've looked at this and studied it?
Yeah, and I suppose in a sense, and it can be different things to different people. And I actually love I embarked on the Enneagram journey, and I've for the last 2 years been involved with a wisdom school where we actually use contemplative practice as well as delving into the Enneagram, which maybe I can share a little bit about that.
That'd be good.
Enneagram, I know a lot of people are like, what is Enneagram? Weird word, weird diagram, But Enneagram, basically Ennea is 9 and gram is like a diagram. It's a 9-pointed diagram. And what it is that we have specific, each 9-point represents a perspective in which we deal with our world, which we relate to ourselves, which we relate to others and the rest of the world. And, it aims, the benefit of it is not just sort of some other personality test, whatever. There are great personality tests around there, and it's nice to get to know, where you function, how you are. But I think what's so important is we all have a lens through which we view our world. We have a perspective. And that perspective is formed. We're not just given this plan and thrown into the world, and here's the plan you need to follow. We are given freedom to be. We are given possibilities of being. God is not standing with this exact determined plan, and we just need to find it and follow it. But I believe that he has invited us to participate, to co-create our journeys. And with him constantly drawing us and wooing us into a future of possibility that will blow our minds. And whatever decisions we take, wherever we go, he is always opening up opportunities for us to find different ways of meaning and different ways of loving and laughing. And so I digress.
That's good.
So there could be many different areas that we silence that unconscious voice, that unconscious place. And so when we approach it, we are so nervous of what is going to speak because we are so used to not listening to this ourselves. And I know for myself as well, so my personality type, my default will be more other focused. I love, giving to others and attending to everyone else's needs, but I wasn't as aware of my own needs. And that can be a huge thing, because
absolutely.
You're living out there. And so when it came to a point where I asked myself the question, what do I desire? And bearing in mind that we had been traveling nonstop, we had, when you lose your stuff, we packed everything into 2 suitcases.
Right.
You lose your stuff, you lose your culture. My kids were now, it was all at once. My kids were now at university and studying, and you suddenly start to question, well, who am I without all this? What am I without my stuff, without what I love doing? And it's actually a profound place to be, because you suddenly realize, you start to ask yourself, well, yeah, who am I? What do I desire? And where do those desires come from? What is informing my desires? And so all this can be an amazing journey into self-discovery and discovering those places and those things that prevent us from engaging more wholly and fully with life. And so for me, one of those, I knew how to look after others, but I wasn't as aware of how to look after myself. And so even this whole journey into a practice of silence was just a beautiful tool for me to actually spend time with myself and to just get to know those. We all have an energy that's moving in a direction. And so that'll be your perspective, how you deal with the world. And that could have been formed from young, where you engage in the world in a certain way and from a certain perspective. And, I'm trying to think where to take it from here in terms of how that perspective affects our relationships. It affects everything that we're busy with.
Yeah, I bet.
And we often think, well, this is just the solid truth that I need to believe and, get for myself. But truth is something that is there, and it's you don't need to defend it. You don't need to fight it. But when you approach the world with a specific viewpoint, you can sometimes close yourself off from the possibilities that are out there and the possibilities of being. So I've waffled a little bit, sorry, because your question was, what is it that prevents us or scares us? And also maybe some of it is that people are scared, if I just lose myself in this place, if I sink down, that there's just nothingness, I'm just going to lose myself. Well, I think of Jesus's words, it's only when you lose yourself that you find a self that is really worth living.
Yeah.
And in that process of letting go of just being, you will discover nothing less than the infinite generosity of God, who is upholding and sustaining you in existence. You are held. There's no bottom to this God, but at the same time, there's this foundation of love that just holds us and supports us. And there's no fear here. There's no fear in this place. But yeah, there's various things that prevent us from entering that place and from letting go.
Yeah. No,
we
I
like to
can
be in
see
control
that
as well.
I love control. It's my favorite. I just absolutely love being in control. This is my personality type. If there's a personality type that just is in absolute control of everything and never loses control, that's my personality type. But, Till will laugh at me, but like genuinely, I live my life under the premise of, am I going to remain in control? And if not, I don't want to do that. I'm constantly pushing myself and trying to break through that. But that is a big drive for me. And it's a big drive for most people. We want to be in control. But I think you hit the nail on the head where it's a death of self in a sense, isn't it? In that, you look at you traveling, like there was a death of so much of what could easily be someone's identity, right? I'm a mom. Well, kind of, but in a very different way now. I'm a homeowner. Well, not so much anymore. I'm a collection of all these different pieces and materials, or I'm a friend. And it's like, well, yeah, but again, like not in the same way. You're going to lose touch with your close, tight-knit community you see regular. And now you're going to be meeting people and seeing them once a year for a week at a time, or like you're having to let go of so many things that really do form in one way or another who we are. There's a letting go there. And even in meditation, there's a beautiful contemplative practice that I try and do every now and again, which is to basically observe what is and recognize that isn't you. And so you might look at your hand and go, that's my hand, but I am not my hand, Yes. And then you might kind of look a bit more at yourself and go, this is my body, but I'm not my body. And then you kind of go even deeper and you go, those are my thoughts, but I'm not my thoughts.
Yeah.
This
and
is
I love
my breath, but I'm not my breath. And you're literally allowing so much of what we are, I am that, to die. Yes. Even in a very microscopic, kind of very loose and easy kind of concept.
Yeah.
It makes me think of people that have done psychedelic trips. I don't know if you've done any of those in the past, but I had psychedelic trips, and there is a very real, depending on different dosages and things that people experience and things, there's a very real like, oh gosh, everything dies. You just, everything is gone and there's nothing left. And yet, whilst Phil died, I'm still here.
Yes.
Still here. And this is who I am, not just that body, not that person that speaks to people online, not that person that's friends with Mary-Anne, not that person that's married to Till. Like, those are all Phil, but not Phil. There's something deeper going on. And I love that meditation takes us into that practice. It lets us almost not kill off, but allow those things that we're so attached to die. And I think that is something we're very scared to do, because a lot of us, we're not ready to let those die. We really are those things still. It's a bit like the Richard Rohr 2 stages of life, the first half and the second half.
Yeah.
Some of us like the first half. We want to stay in the first half. Don't make us go into the second half. I like my story. I like my stuff. I like my relationships. I like this Phil I've made. Don't let this Phil die. And I think meditation is an invitation to kind of move into that second stage. It does involve death. Oh, sorry. Did you lose me for a second there?
I lost you there for a bit, Phil.
You're back. So yeah, I guess I'm just saying it's meditation, contemplation, centering ourselves. It's this invitation to die to self, to allow so much of our story to die. And that's a scary idea, a scary concept to me.
Yeah. And you mentioned I love the way you described that. It just so hit the nail on the head. But I loved your use of the word, those things that we attach to. And I think that is a big part of it and people want to know, why do you need to detach from these thoughts? These could be good thoughts. Why must I detach from them? Or, these could be good things. But the detachment is because those thoughts, like if I had to say to you, okay, Phil, you imagine right now an orange, a lovely, juicy Florida orange. And you can imagine that right now. Could you tell me a little bit about the orange?
It is orange in color. It's got a nice kind of squidgy feel to it. If I rip it open, it's going to be juicy and sticky. It's going to smell delicious. Yeah, I'm there.
Yum. I feel like an orange now.
I want one. I want a mid-afternoon snack now.
But in you describing that orange, is it an orange? Have you got that orange?
No.
Your words and your description about that orange are not the orange. No. You're merely describing or pointing to an orange, however well you're doing it. And so just the way you've said, that we are not those things. Our ideas about ourselves are not ourselves. And our ideas about God are not God. And we attach to those ideas because they give us that they're important. It's not that the concepts and ideas are not important, but we attach to them in a way that we don't allow ourselves to see the fullness of what they point to. And just like in terms of, the icon on your computer, that when you click on it, it opens up to an application that's much larger than that little symbol there. In the same way, if you want to get to the bottom of who you really, really, really are at your center, you will find that it is nothing less than the infinite generosity of God, who's poured himself out into your existence, who is in every breath that you breathe, who is so expansive and so wide and so large and yet so intimately acquainted with us. And when we attach ourselves to one idea or concept, we make it, like Andre always describes, an idol. Because our gaze has hit that thing and has stayed there and has formed that. But we really want to gaze through. We want to find that luminous seeing where we can observe things and we can observe our world and it will come alive. We can really be with the next person that we have a coffee with, not just, well, this isn't really part of the plan. This isn't really a huge crowd. I'm not really achieving my goal. We can actually be with them and not let our vision be any larger than that next person. We can give ourselves, because the greatest gift you can give to anyone, to God, is your attention. And to just consent to be.
Love that. That's really beautiful. I'm really intrigued about your journey, Mary-Anne, because you talk of God in such a beautiful way. And a lot of people listening to this they're done with God. Some people have reimagined God. Some people are still kind of coming to terms with what do they think God is. They've grown up in a fundamental Christian home and they're not really happy with that, but they don't know where to take that. Like, what has been your journey from growing up to getting to see God as such an expansive being that is beyond our metaphors and our vain descriptions? Like, how did you navigate that? Because that's, for a lot of people, that's a very divergent position to hold to kind of a more kind of traditional, conventional Christian kind of concept of God.
Yes. And I suppose
and that's why people who are Christians are scared of meditation and contemplation. There's a lot of that in there. We don't like an idea of a God that's bigger than our metaphor. We like the metaphor.
Let's just keep it here because this is safe. And I mean, I grew up I didn't actually grow up in a very religious background. My mom was seeking. My dad was not keen. He'd grown up in a missionary family, and his father was actually a missionary with David Livingstone and the boys. So to put it in context, I was born when my dad was 60. Wow. So, and and he had completely rebelled against that. So there was a lot of tension in the house with, religious things. And, what I knew about God was church on a Sunday. I lost my mom when I was 11. She passed away, cancer. And I remember even that year trying to navigate her loss, and not really having an idea that I was held in a greater context, because the God I knew was from Sunday school and, these random stories. And it was really a God that was outside there, somewhere else, watching us and waiting for us to go wrong so that, he could keep us in line. And it was about a year after she passed that I was sitting actually I was away, and they had formed a library in her name, and they'd showed a video of it, and I saw her picture again, and obviously the grief just came up again, and everyone had left, and I was sitting on the stairs, and I was observing this sunset, and I just remember it was like blank. It was hollow. I couldn't feel its beauty. I couldn't feel its love. And I was suddenly overwhelmed with grief. And to such an extent, I felt like something was throttling me physically. Wow. I couldn't breathe. And in that moment, I hear my mom's voice as clearly as I hear yours saying, she used to call me Mary-Anne. She said, Mary-Anne, I want you to listen now. I am so happy where I am. I am so at peace. And she said, now I want you to listen. Do not ever, ever let my death be an excuse for you not to live. Live. And in that moment, it was like the grief lifted. The sun streamed in. I remember feeling its warmth physically and feeling this expansiveness. And, so I start with that picture. I still, at that stage, I didn't understand the full extent of what had happened in that moment, but I knew I had permission to live. And I didn't need for her death to define the rest of my life and my living, and to realize that I carried her with me. And so God had allowed me that moment of just affirmation and to release me. I hadn't been allowed to go to her funeral, so I had no real closure. My dad thought he was protecting me, at the age of 11. But the years that followed, even though I didn't have really a relationship with God in any way, I know something had happened in that moment. I had an encounter when I was 17 with Jesus, and it was beyond what I understood or had a framework for. But then, getting involved in church, and the whole thing kind of, and we've heard many people speak about this, that they encountered this God who was just in their childhood, that they could talk to, that was just there. And then they almost had to go and get involved with religion to be talked out of it, that suddenly they had to accept Jesus as Lord in a specific way. They had to, some sort of formula. And I think we so miss the God who just desires to encounter us, and who is the very sustenance of our lives, that we would not take a breath were it not given, that we are upheld by God. And so to compartmentalize or have this God outside of us, I don't know how to see that anymore. Right. And, obviously our journey went along many forms as well, just discovering, even because our Christian walk is so embedded with the biblical story. And if we understand the biblical story in a certain way, that is the God we're going to worship. And when you let that story really come alive and you stop making it say or reading into it what you need it to say, you can actually start appreciating that this is a human drama.
Yeah.
These were humans writing about God, writing about their world. And in it and through it, we are able to find God in our journey. And so also the work of Renee Girard as well was very helpful for us in unpacking, even we are all involved in myth making. We tell our stories. And so he shed light on those myths and how those myths were developed to hide the violence, and how the biblical narrative in an amazing way actually unveils and names it, calls it out, says, no, that's what it is. And how this culminates in Jesus. And so there have been many things along the journey that have helped us and pointed us in a direction and understanding a God who is not sitting with a plan, sitting up there with this static blueprint, but a God who is involved in our lives, who hovers over the messiness of our lives. If we learn anything from the incarnation, is that God desired to be human, to be in this existence, to be part of us, to have the joy and the surprise of us even surprising God, of us partaking in this journey that is real, that we really do have a choice, and what we do and what we choose matters, and it matters to God. And so, it's been an interesting journey, but it's like the Aslan story where Lucy meets Aslan later on and says, Aslan, you've grown, or you've got bigger. And he's like, no, you've grown. Every year that you grow, you will see me bigger. And so, what a joy to be on a journey. And I know, when you go through a process of deconstructing ideas, those, like we said, those attachment to the ideas, if you're really serious about it, you will find you're not just rearranging ideas, but I know you've discovered this as well, that you start to unravel. Your very being starts to deconstruct. Because everything that you maybe placed a value of, it has a different value now. And I think it's something that we discover with our whole being. It's not just this deconstructing ideas and putting them on our shelves, but it's you lose yourself to find a more expansive self. Yeah.
How did you navigate that personally? Like you're talking about, so much of this, our concept of God, the language we use to describe God, to grapple with this concept, which everyone's trying to do, right? We're all trying to figure it out. We all pick our language. We all pick our book. We pick our priest to follow, whatever it is. And we go, that's what I'll do. Yes. That interweaves with who we are, our identity is, like you're saying, there's an intrinsic kind of concept of the nature of God that I create. It ultimately creates me. It defines who I am. And so as that concept of God starts to unravel and we start to see, gosh, there's a God that is bigger than that, or maybe there's no God at all in this moment because I've not figured out the God that's bigger. I've just figured out that this small God isn't necessarily God. Yes. And so in that we start to go, oh crap, like, well, who am I? Or what's going on? Or am I wrong? Or, what do I do with the fact there's a bigger God? That's terrifying. Does that mean that Jews are saved too, or the Hindus, or these things that seem so big maybe at certain times in our fundamentalisms, in our metaphor, it can be really tumultuous. Was that something that you went through in this process? Was there like big ups and downs, or was it quite an easy, enjoyable journey for you? The way you talk about it sounds so beautiful and fun and lovely. But I know that's not everyone's experience for it to be just that. I know some people it does feel like that. I know for me, I mostly enjoyed my deconstruction. I'm a weirdo. But I'm intrigued, like, you probably, it doesn't sound like you were going through a lot of this by the time you had your centering prayer practice. That was further down the road, so you didn't have that concept of going into yourself, finding peace.
And actually, that was one of the things that actually led me there, because, and I went through a really physical time as well, where I went through a time of sleeplessness. There was a physical period where a lot of this was happening, where, ideas were challenged, but it was, like I said, interwoven with self, who I was as well with the traveling was also changing, what I'd identified with. So there was a period where I felt like I had lost myself. But I remember consistently through that time, it's like I had to die to the ideas that I had, and I had to get to the point where I faced death. I faced not being loved, not being held. I faced that and kind of stared it in the face and go, well, what am I and who am I if this is the case? And to take each scenario and then go, you know what, I am loved. And I think the greatest comfort for me throughout has been whether what I believed or held on to was right or wrong was not where my faith or my confidence lay, but in the fact that I am loved and that I'm held. And so for me, that was the anchor, but I almost had to go through facing, well, what is it if I'm not, to look, what is my thought about love even, because I certainly love love. But what is love? And have I got an idea about love that is actually small? And can I look at that? And can I look at not being loved? And what does that look like? And to discover it all through that, to realize that there was this hand holding me, that in the depth of my being, and that was one of the reasons why I moved towards a practice of silence, was, to be in a habit while we on the move, while we racing from one place to another, where I could find a habit of, there's certain habits we often in the charismatic world, we shy away from habits or anything that vaguely sounds like a law or that I must do something. But there are certain habits that are just really good, like brushing your teeth in the morning, it's beneficial for you and for everyone around you.
Yeah.
It's a silly example, but to find a place where I could actually be quiet and just be with God, knowing that whatever my ideas were and whatever I attached value to, that wasn't the most important thing, and that I would find all of that, and I would find my way of being. And I found I some people kind of, for me, throw the baby out of the bathwater, and feel like, they deconstruct and unravel to the point where they just don't find anything. And everyone's on their own journey. Who knows how it will look for them in a year, and how it will look. We are all on a very different journey, and it's one in which I just know that this God who is opening up infinite possibilities for us is standing in front of us and wooing us in whatever way you feel drawn to more, to transcend the smallness of your thoughts or the dialogue that is going on, that is so divisive. There is a greater voice and a greater drawing that's saying whatever and wherever you are at, there are new possibilities of meaning for you. And this may not have looked like a fantastic year for you. For a lot of people, it's been a terrible year. But I have a confidence that we will find that drawing and that we will find that voice, that still small voice that says to us, you know what? Through this all, you are held and you are loved and you are known. And for me, that speaks louder than whether I am theologically right, whether I've got all my ducks in a row. And I truly believe that if what you are busy with is helping you to love people more and to love more, you're busy with what Jesus was busy with. Yeah. But if you're busy with something that is causing enmity, it's causing strife, it's harming, whatever your banner is, if your banner is evangelical Christianity or whether it's radical, whatever your banner is, if you are not walking in love, you're eating of the wrong fruit.
Yeah. And it's funny to me, a lot of people that talk about people that are deconstructing, that are deconverting, going through all sorts of different evolutions or devolutions of faith. The narrative is generally speaking, oh, they've thrown God out. They're done with that. They've fallen away. They've X, Y, or Z. And whilst maybe some do that, yeah, it's possible. It's not impossible. And there certainly are people that fall into that category. The vast majority of people are holding on to some sort of spirituality. And in fact, just hearing what you're talking about, or I've talked to other atheists, that have said similar things of going, oh yeah, I don't believe in God, but then they talk about what they do believe in.
Yes.
What do they believe in? They believe in love. They believe in being present. They believe in, peace. They believe in joy. They believe in these things that are animating and moving them forward and creating these new realities and creating their own metaphor and myth to give meaning to this world. And I'm like, oh, that's okay. You don't have to call it God.
Yes.
I talked to Stephen Mitchell, who he's a well-known Zen Buddhist, and I was asking him because he will use the term God when talking to Christians, and I'm like, what do you mean though? When you say God and you're going, I'm going to use God for you.
Yes.
What does it mean to you that you can still be authentic and real saying that? And he's like, yeah, I don't believe in a person, a guy with a beard that's a God. He's like, for me, God is existence. It is reality. Whatever reality is and whatever reality becomes next, that is God. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I am that I am, or, whatever. I'm like, I don't really see why Christians even should be bothered by that. But he's not calling himself a Christian, so we need to get our pitchforks out or whatever.
And
I'm just, it's when you get rid of these very black and white descriptors, these metaphors, these myths, and when you put them to the side and you go, okay, but what is God? What is this thing? You go, gosh, we're all doing this together, really, atheist, Jew, agnostic, Hindu, Christian, we're all kind of wanting to move forward in love. I've not met anyone that's deconstructed, atheist, agnostic, Christian, something else that hasn't become more loving. No one's deconstructed their Christian faith because they want to be less loving. It's usually because they want to become more loving, and the particular flavor of Christianity they've been exposed to and within, it's holding them back from being loving. You're talking about, it's a smaller notion of love, right? It's the Westboro Baptists going, oh, well, we love people. And it's like, I know you think you're loving people, and I'm sure in some minute concept, there might be some kind of love in there somewhere.
Yeah.
But it's a very limited concept. And I feel like you could grow in your understanding of what it looks like to love. And so there's a point where, you know, you go, I'm going to have to leave this if I'm going to move forward in love.
And suddenly, you know, when you find love and you find that God is so poured out into all existence, then you even start to look at nature in a different way. You start to look at people in a different way. You're no longer looking for boundaries or whether you're in or out or left or right. You're looking for where we can connect, and you acknowledging the life that is in them. And I can't be in nature in the same way as I used to because I acknowledge God there. You know, I think of that beautiful passage, Psalm 19, where it speaks about the heavens declare the glory of God. You know, the firmament explains him day by day, pours forth speech. Night by night knowledge, you know, but you don't hear their voice, you don't hear the speech, but the language is there. Brings me back to the language of God is silence. There is a language so beautiful and so pure and so full. I mean, it is alive and full. We often think of something like silence and we think it's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Silence has volume. It has substance, and when you can attune to that, you suddenly realize, oh my gosh, all of life is spiritual. Everything belongs, you know. And I don't know, I maybe sound sometimes like a bit like Away with the Fairies or like a hippie child, but I think the reality is that there is nowhere we can go and nothing we can do that we are not sustained by the very creator of life and existence. And and Jesus so beautifully demonstrates that connection of our God, my God and your God, my Father and your Father. I'm going to prepare a place where I am, you may be also. That this is not a geographical place, space, culture, gender. In fact, he obliterates all those paradigms that we had and have, and says what this thing is about is communion and relationship, and you're in it. And, you know, it becomes exciting when you realize that the God of this universe, that this is a benevolent God who's for you. And what a wonderful thing, you know, the universe is not out to get you, and God's not out to get you. You can just relax and chill, and whether you think you're wrong or right, you are loved despite it.
It's beautiful. I absolutely love it. I love it. I'm speechless. I'm just enjoying that.
That is unusual for you, Phil.
I know, if you cannot
be
I
admire you. You have. I'm like, if I could just. You are an incredible orator.
Thank you very much. Well, coming from you, I mean, you are a wordsmith for sure. The way that you articulate is beautiful, and so I mean, connecting with that it just sounds beautiful. You know, as I said earlier on, like there's something about the way that you carry yourself, the way that you articulate what you believe and how you live, that is magnetic. It draws me in. I'm like, yes, I want that. Like, you know, I want to end this call and go and be contemplative. I want to go and do some centering prayer, you know.
That's awesome.
I'll probably end up playing a video game, or, you know. I'll immediately start editing this podcast because that's really important. But no, there is something so beautiful and it does draws in. And I think that's the beauty as well of understanding this space where we are so interwoven and we are so interconnected. And if we have eyes to see, if we have ears to hear, we go, yes, that's what I want. That's what I need. That's who I am. What you're describing, that's if I can peel back the layers and have a look, that's what's there waiting for me. You know, it's there all the time. Like you said, it's the bookmark. You know, if at any point I can turn to that page in the book and go, oh yeah, here I am, present, you know? But I'd much rather be on the speedboat most of the time. It's such a beautiful, beautiful concept. I absolutely love it. Mary-Anne, I wonder, and you don't have to do this if you're not interested or you don't think it would work, but I wonder, would you be up for maybe leading me and in the future, people will be listening to watching this, hopefully, maybe in some form of short kind of contemplative practice? Is there something that you could lead us in that's whatever you think, 5-10 minutes, something like that?
Yes, I could do. And just for the sake of this call, you know, I could just lead you in that just awareness, maybe what do you think? 5 minutes?
Sure. I mean, there's no limit to our podcast. We're quite happy. Like somewhere between 10 minutes is great. Yeah, if that works.
Okay.
So yeah.
And then, and I can just lead you. Maybe I'll prepare you first in terms of, you know, there might be people out there who have never even sat still for a moment.
Please set a bit of groundwork.
You know, where this is going. And so maybe just to prepare you in a sense, because, when, say, I would speak of dropping your gaze, you know, somebody might ask, well, what does that even mean? How do you drop your gaze? Where are you dropping your gaze? How does this work? And so maybe together we can picture, so you obviously in a room or wherever you are sitting, just focus your attention on the furthest place from you. So it might be a spot on the wall, and just fix your attention to that wall and that space. And now place your attention to a spot in the middle of the floor, maybe. It's kind of midway between the wall and you. And now place your attention physically to your heart space. Right there, kind of in the middle of your chest. Okay, now close your eyes. Now the same thing in your mind's eye. Place your attention to that spot on the wall that you first looked at. So imagine yourself with your eyes closed, looking at that spot on the wall. And now place your attention to that same spot in the middle of the room on the floor. And now drop your attention inside to that heart space. And as you sit with that dropped gaze, you might become conscious of your breath. Maybe you're conscious of your heartbeat because you think, oh my goodness, is this going to work? And I just invite you to just, as you breathe in, realize that you are breathing in the very love and affirmation and sense of belonging in which you find yourself and you find your being. And without speaking the words out loud, just in your heart, if you can imagine, as this next breath enters your nostrils and travels down, as you breathe deeply in, imagine that you are breathing in the love of your Abba. And as the breath goes in, imagine God affirming you with I love you. And as your next breath goes out, you respond with I love you. And just for a minute, sit with that. Breathing in, I love you. And breathing out your I love you back. Now we're just going to start the 10 minutes of silence. And I want to encourage you that it's okay. You might find thoughts streaming at you. Just be gentle with those thoughts and be gentle with yourself. And just allow them to waft by. And if you do become aware of a thought, it can be with a glance or with a breath. Just come back to that place like the bookmark. To just be with the love that holds you. As you quietly just come up from that place of quiet, do you hear my voice? Just become conscious of your breath again. And gently open your eyes.
That was wonderful. Thank you.
I just realized I should have probably muted myself here.
I'm going to mute the audio on my side, so
the fridge going and
okay, no, it's fine. I probably will mark the time and mute them on the recordings. So,
but it's also, you know, even those kind of things. There's no distraction in this kind of thing. Whether something happens, whether it's thoughts, whether it's noises, all part of your beautiful world.
Yeah. I remember listening to someone talk about meditation, and they said that the best place to meditate was a busy mall. And they said, like, if you can do it, then there's nothing in your life really where you're not going to be able to go, okay, let me just take a second, take a breath, be present, find myself. He says, if you can do that in the middle of a mall, he's like, you'll be fine. And so the noise of a fridge in the background, if that's going to throw you, you're still going to probably be wanting to practice some, you know, contemplation and
I think that just reminds me that, you know, that is the benefit of developing a practice where you spend time, whether it's first thing in the morning, find a time that suits you. Because if it's there and it can become a habit, that is what you take into the busy mall. Is that quiet. You can take that quiet into your everyday life, and then you will be able to deal with distractions better. I remember many times sitting in a car on the way to a meeting or in an airplane or at an airport and just, being there, but being in another place at the same time.
Gosh, I know. I've spent enough time in airports to know I would like to be somewhere else when I was there.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. That's really great. Well, Mary-Anne, thank you so much. Honestly, this has been absolutely fantastic. You and Andre as well you're putting out phenomenal resources, amazing resources in schools, podcasts, different things that you're doing. How can people be connected to you, get more of what you're about, dive into some of your resources?
Yes.
Let us know how we can do that.
Sure. The main place you can go is to our website, Always Loved, Loved, alwaysloved.net. So that's one place where you'll find various resources, whether it's articles, our books, music, CDs. You can also connect through that to our online school. We're actually launching the new school. We start every January. It runs through January through the end of November. Actually next year it's slightly different. We've actually condensed the material and packed it into two 6-month courses. But if you go onto our website and you look for the online school there, it's called Mimesis Academy. And there's 2 6-month courses available on that. And we've really found that that is a place where it's not just about the writing every week. It's about the community, and it's a kind of platform that's set up that everyone is able to engage with one another. So, things, for instance, like people deconstructing and going through and having ideas challenged and feel like they're unraveling, they suddenly find themselves in a community where the conversation is so rich, there's no judgment, and you working through on the same page, even though you're different pages in your journey. there's a kind of a focus. And so that's been we've had beautiful testimonies come out of that, which people can see if they go to the website, Mimesis Academy. They will find that and the testimonials. And then our podcast, which we just launched, is called QYourApodcast.com. So it stands for Questioning Your Answers Podcast. And that's on all, whether it be Apple, whatever your favorite platform is, you can find us there QYourA Podcast.
And you're doing that with Anthony Bartlett and Jeff Turner, is that right?
Jeff and Anthony are part of they're hosting with us. And so,
that's awesome.
So that's been a great collaboration. We look forward to many more conversations with them. And obviously they've got guests that they're bringing on as well. They're both such gems and such a wealth
absolutely.
Of wisdom.
Yeah. Gosh, that's incredible. And then as far as people connecting with you personally, social media and stuff, do you have a platform that you like to connect with people particularly?
So Facebook, Facebook or Instagram. And you'll find as well, like for instance, the podcast has a page as well. QA is on Facebook, or else just Mary-Anne Rabe or Andre Rabe, and we love to engage. Yeah, so we may not get back immediately, but we are always in conversation with people and love that kind of dialogue.
Yeah, awesome. Well, yeah, I can say without hesitation that you are people that I highly recommend being in conversation with. So you have enriched my life. And Tilly told me I had to say hi as well. And so I need to make sure I get that in.
Hi,
she's
Tilly.
teaching right now. So otherwise she'd have probably poked her head in and said hello. But yeah.
She's such a gem. Really, we love her.
She's
and we love you, Phil. You are such a beautiful voice and especially, in places where people are navigating a journey which is not always easy. And it's wonderful that they can hear your voice, the voice of reason through it all. So we appreciate
well, I'm not sure about the voice of reason, but it's a voice.
If I'm out of my mind, it's for the Lord. If I'm sane mind, it's for you.
Sometimes it's like, oh no, there's just one other person that's insane. At least I'm not alone. Phil's here with me as well. No, absolutely great to have you, honestly, and give my love to Andre as well.
Will do. Sure. Thank you so much.
To have him back on the show as well at some point, and so
he'd love
you guys
to.
Are the best. I absolutely love you both. I'll let you know when this comes out, obviously, and
okay,
sure,
great.
and all the links to everything you've said will be in the show notes, so people listening or watching can check that out and go follow Mary-Anne, go check out their stuff, go join the school. I've done some of your school. I remember, I think it was when me and Tilly just got married. You guys asked if we wanted to do the school, and we jumped on the school, and I think I did the first 2 months. In fact, no, it was right when we were about to get married, and it was just like, it
just went crazy. And
so we dropped a few things in our lives. I stopped traveling, and we stopped doing the school, and we both were like, oh, we really want to go back and do the school. And so who knows, maybe at some point, if people jump on, they'll find us there as well. Cause,
that'll be
really
awesome.
enjoyed
Anytime, you're always welcome.
And so, but I highly, highly recommend it. It was such a great format. It's really enjoyable, like having some structure to this grand exploration. It feels like it's this endless opportunity for exploration, having some sort of funnel of like, hey, we've got something that we can kind of give you to go along on, and what conclusions you draw don't have to be the same as anyone else in this.
Totally.
But let's have that discussion and let's have that exploration together in a few niche areas, kind of going on some form of journey. It's a beautiful structure, and I really enjoyed the conversations.
Also, and we're the ones that feel so blessed because we get to be part of people's journey, and wow, and some of the things you just think, oh my gosh, it's no wonder we're a body and we need one another because we just see from different perspectives, and
it's so beautiful.
So great.
Yeah. Well, thank you for taking the time to share your perspective. Thank you for taking the time to guide us in some centering, and hopefully some people have more of a taste of that as well. And hopefully people can see as well that that doesn't need to carry a particular flavor of faith or even a certainty of faith. You can be very uncertain, but one thing you can be certain is you are here.
Yes, absolutely.
So at least we've got that we can kind of fall back into whenever we want.
Yeah.
So no, thank you for that. I really appreciate it. And I'll speak to you again soon. Yeah.
Thanks, Phil.
All right. Love you, Mary. Catch you later.
Bye-bye.